Behind every old TV show is a world full of stories that haven't been told yet. Have you ever thought what really went on behind the scenes? The Andy Griffith Show made a lot of people laugh and feel good, but the group didn't always get along. Is it possible? In his early days in Hollywood, Ron Howard had a secret grudge against a fellow actress. And who did he really dislike? Don't leave until we tell you this secret story that will change the way you see this popular show. Let's take a better look at the Andy Griffith Show, a show that people love that first aired on CBS in 1960. This TV show takes place in the made-up city of Mayberry in North Carolina and is about Sheriff Andy Taylor, played by Andy Griffith, who has to keep the law and raise his young son Opie, played by Ron Howard. There were 8 years of the show in the United States. It had a gentle sense of humor and taught important skills. There are some famous characters, like the cute but bad Constable Barney Fife, played by Don Knotts. The way Bernard Knotts interacted with Griffith's character was funny, and one of his roles on the show earned him 5 Emmys. He was fired after 5 seasons so he could play other parts in films. No matter what, his performance as Barney Fife is one of the most famous in TV history. The fact that the show consistently got top 10 Nielsen numbers made that clear. It got to number 2 the last time it was played in 1968 when it stopped. It had a big impact on American society by inspiring shows like Gomer Pyle USMC and Mayberry RFD. As a rerun series, it continued to provide audiences with timeless entertainment. Griffith, Howard Knotts, and Frances Bavier, who played Aunt Bee, were all in this group, which helped the show do well. On the contrary, Ron Howard's future in Hollywood would depend on what he did on the show. For Ron Howard, the Andy Griffith Show was a chance to improve as an actor and move on to the next part of his career. Howard was only 6 years old when he was cast on the show as Opie Taylor, the boy next door and happy-go-lucky son of Sheriff Andy Taylor. His quick wit and love of being around people quickly captivated the viewers. His first part was a big hit with viewers. He went on to become one of the most famous directors in Hollywood thanks to that movie. Luckily, Howard fit right in with the show's veteran stars like Andy Griffith and Don Knotts. They were with him during the shoot. In real life and on screen, Griffith had a big impact on Howard's life. He taught him morals and how to keep going even when things got hard. Howard liked working with his co-workers, but it was hard to be an actor, a student, and a kid all at the same time. In any case, these early events helped him become the strong and devoted worker he would become later. Howard was just a kid trying to fit in, even though he was famous for playing Opie. His friends often made fun of him for it. He later said that even though he loved playing, the attention it got to him sometimes made it hard. There were a lot of chances to do cool things on the show, but it was also hard because the kids were playing on camera. A memorable event happened while the opening scenes were being filmed. The young Howard couldn't throw the rock far enough for Opie to make a splash in the lake for the shot. To make the impact, someone on the crew would throw another rock at the same time as Opie's to line up the splash. Howard loved this little trick because it reminded him of both the stress and the fun of his early work. The work training he got on the Andy Griffith Show was very important, teaching him the importance of working together, being patient, and not giving up. Howard's childhood years on set as an actor and as a person gave him a first-hand look at how great TV production works, which helped him understand how things work behind the scenes. By the time the show ended in 1968, Howard had grown from a child actor who was already very good at what he did to an experienced performer who was ready for the amazing future that lay ahead. The Andy Griffith Show made me feel like I was in a small town, but sometimes things were better off screen. People usually thought of Andy Griffith as calm and relaxed, but he had a different side that came out every once in a while. He would pull funny stunts that not everyone liked. Griffith had a very complicated connection with Frances Bavier, who played Aunt Bee. As a seasoned Broadway actor, she was said to have found Griffith's silly behavior distracting and unprofessional, causing them to sometimes fight with each other. Griffith wasn't the only one on set who caused trouble. Don Knotts and Griffith stayed friends for life, but there were times when things got tense, especially when it came to the future of the show. Knotts had only agreed to work on the show for 5 seasons at first, and he had other plans for when his deal was up. As the show went on, though, both of them were a little let down that Knotts couldn't have had a bigger impact on how it went. Even with these problems, Griffith's practical jokes became a normal part of life on set. Knotts was one of his favorite people to go after. Often, to wake him up from naps, he would drop metal film cans on the ground. Even though she was shocked, Knotts didn't seem to mind. The two became close, making an on-screen pair that fans loved and could tell was real. Griffith pulled a lot of jokes on everyone, even George Goober Lindsay. He woke up from a nap one time to find duck guts hung all over his dressing room. The jokes Griffith told were all in good fun, but they sometimes got in the way of serious actors like Frances Bavier. Bavier, an actor who was trained in New York, had a very tense relationship with Griffith. She didn't like his easygoing, small-town style of comedy. Their relationship was a lot more difficult off-screen than it looked on camera. But while shooting, they both kept a professional air, making sure that their differences didn't get in the way of their work. Later in life, Bavier apologized to Griffith from the bottom of her heart. She knew she had caused their stress and wanted to make peace. In the end, the professionalism of the group won out over any problems that happened off-screen. However, with a few funny lines and protests, they helped make one of the most popular TV shows that people still enjoy today. The relationships in the show bring up the problems of working somewhere like this. One thing that can be seen is the actors' passion. No matter what personal problems they had, the Andy Griffith Show will always show how committed and close they were. What do you think about the problems that happened on the Andy Griffith Show set? Did they make the show more interesting or take away from the experience of working together as a whole? A big part of the success of the Andy Griffith Show was how close Andy Griffith was to his co-stars, especially Ron Howard. Griffith played the loving Sheriff Andy Taylor, and in real life, he was like a dad to Howard. As a kid, Howard got a lot of help and advice from Griffith, who helped him deal with the problems that came with being a child star. Howard has made it clear that he has a lot of respect for Griffith and credits Griffith with a lot of his success in Hollywood. While this father-son relationship was shown on screen, Griffith sometimes had tense interactions with other cast members, especially Frances Bavier, who played Aunt Bee. As a classically trained actress, Frances Bavier found Andy Griffith's fun and silly way of filming a bit difficult at times. Their different personalities sometimes caused problems, but they both stayed professional throughout the show's run. It is said that many years later, Bavier called Griffith to ask him to forgive them for being rivals during the killings. But Griffith's friendship with Don Knotts was one of the most important things in his life and in his playing career. They were both very smart and funny together, and they had great chemistry on screen, which was what the show was all about. Even after Knotts quit the show in 1965, they stayed friends off screen. Griffith was glad that Knotts had died, but he knew that the show had never been better without him. They stayed friends, though, until Knotts died in 2006, which shows how close the friendship really was. To honor him, the people of Morgantown have started a movement to put up a statue of Knotts at the Metropolitan Theater in downtown Morgantown. The statue was put up by Jamie Lester, a local artist and fellow West Virginian. This statue was put in place in 2016 and is still a wonderful honor to Knotts. Lastly, though, Griffith did sometimes argue and fight with group members. He was the heart of the Andy Griffith Show and built more than just professional relationships. He was the show's screen teamwork and made sure it would be a hit. Of course, his help in working with Ron Howard and becoming friends with Don Knotts was a big part of not only the show's success, but also the history of television. Griffith's role as a father figure to Howard and his close, unbreakable friendship with Knotts became what the show was all about and had an impact on viewers both on and off screen. When it came to work and personal relationships, Andy Griffith and Don Knotts had the best friendship of all the cast members. Knotts had agreed at first to only be in one episode of the show. But the radical and stupid Deputy Barney Fife's comedy made both watchers and Griffith happy. Griffith made it a point to stand up for Knotts to the network, and soon the on-camera pair of the show was well known. Behind the scenes, they became very close and always kept things business. Later, both Griffith and Knotts would say nice things about the other person's timing and sense of humor, but Knotts would usually talk about how Griffith had given him the right conditions to do well. But the two stayed close friends after Knotts quit the show in 1965 to work full-time in films. Aside from show business, they were often seen doing other things together. Griffith missed having Knotts on the set because he was not only a co-worker who brought life and energy to the set, but also a friend and co-worker. Even though they were no longer doing business together, they stayed friends until the end. Griffith was with Knotts during his last hours. Because of this, their bond has become one of the most well-known and loved on TV, showing that real friendships last a lifetime. Griffith and Knotts' relationship is also seen as real and loving, and fans have continued to admire it even after he left the football team many years later. It's a surprise that Ron Howard's problems on the Andy Griffith Show weren't caused by problems with his co-stars, whom he had a lot of respect for. Howard was really upset about the constant pressure of being a kid star. Being Opie and having to deal with the demands of school left little time for a normal childhood. Also, the attention he got from being famous was more of a burden than a blessing. Even though he loved his job, he often felt alone among kids his age because they would make fun of him for being Opie. This made him feel very alone even though he was on TV, quotes most loved TV shows. Howard's feelings were hurt a lot by working with skilled adults like Andy Griffith, Don Knotts, and Frances Bavier. As both a kid and a professional actor, he had to deal with a lot of stress and long hours. He also had to say the same lines over and over again. He talked about those years and how hard it was to grow up handling two worlds, the one in front of the camera and the one behind it. Howard has surprisingly never said anything bad about his co-stars. He often talked about Andy Griffith as a father figure and remembered how funny Don Knotts was and how it kept him entertained. Even though there were some fights between adults on set, Howard remembers that the group was very kind and helpful to him, making sure he felt at ease. In the end, he didn't dislike anyone from the Andy Griffith Show. His anger was directed at fame itself and the stresses of growing up too quickly in the public eye. Now that Howard is an adult, he has talked about the mental problems that came with being a child star. This brings to light problems that young actors often go unnoticed. Ron Howard is quick to talk about the good things about his time on the Andy Griffith Show, even though there were some problems. He knew that the years he spent growing up would set the stage for his successful job as a director and producer. Did Ron Howard have a hard time as a kid star on the Andy Griffith Show? What do you think about that? Fans were treated to moments of warmth and good vibes in every show, and the actors kept themselves amused by pulling practical jokes on the set. A lot of trouble was a part of the show's main themes, and Andy Griffith, who loved pulling tricks on people, came up with most of them. His friendly nature made the shooting go more smoothly, and he often pulled harmless practical jokes on other actors. Crashing metal film canisters on the floor to wake up Don Knotts from naps was one of his favorite tricks. Knotts was always surprised and laughing. Griffith did more crazy things after he got Knotts. He also went after George, Goober Lindsay, the show's chill mechanic. One funny joke Griffith pulled was that he filled Lindsay's locker room with duck guts while he was sleeping. Even though they were fun, these pranks helped the cast relax after long days of shooting and built friendships that went beyond the set. Not everyone liked the show's fun tone, though. The actress Frances Bavier, who played the strict Aunt Bee, wasn't as amused by the pranks. With her classical acting training, she liked a more serious and professional setting. Griffith's jokes and casual attitude often made her mad. This stress was known to everyone. Still, both players were very professional when the cameras were rolling. It's interesting that some of the funny things that the cast did behind the scenes made it into the episodes, which made the Andy Griffith Show even more charming. In the episode, runaway kid Opie and his friends play a joke on Sheriff Taylor by moving his car right in front of a fire hydrant. This gets the town sheriff a ticket. This fun mix of off-screen jokes and on-screen stories not only added to the show's lighthearted appeal, but it also showed how the group really got along with each other. Off-screen humor helped build friendships that translated to on-screen chemistry, which added to the show's general charm and realism. Having fun during these times wasn't just for fun. During the long hours of shooting, they helped keep everyone excited and happy, and made friends for life among the group. People loved the show, but the funny things that happened behind the scenes brought everyone together and kept them laughing and having a good time. This one-of-a-kind dynamic shows that the warmth and humor shown above and below the camera were just as real, which makes fans love the show even more. The Mayberry magic wasn't just great writing and acting, it was also a reflection of the real bonds that formed off-screen, which made the show even more meaningful to its viewers. Get ready to be shocked by an apology that changed everything behind the scenes. After shooting was over, one of the most surprising things to ever happen on the Andy Griffith Show happened. In public, Frances Bavier, who played the beloved Aunt Bee, said sorry to Andy Griffith, who played her easygoing home cooking character. Aunt Bee was played by Bavier with kindness and care, but her real-life relationship with Griffith was very tense. Griffith was a laid-back joker, which made her think of him more as a comic than a coworker. People who were near the shooting saw how angry they were because the two were not close like they used to be. Griffith did a terrible job with how he treated his players, and Bavier was not the type of actress to take that line down, since she was a New York City-based performer with classical training. Over time, their relationship became tense because she couldn't take his lazy attitude any longer. The Andy Griffith Show became a classic TV show because of how great both stars were in their roles. After many years, when they went their different ways, Bavier thought about the time they had spent together. She did something very unusual. She called Griffith one day to say she was sorry for being a bothersome person during the show's filming. She said she felt bad about the fights they had in the past and admitted that her anger had hurt their working relationship. It was shocking and sincere that they said sorry, especially since it had been so long since they worked together. Griffith and Bavier seemed to truly feel bad about what they did and want to make things right. As Griffith was kind enough to accept her apology, it was possible for them to end their argument before Bavier died in 1989, which meant that they could forget about their fight. Both stars felt at peace after this reconciliation, which healed old scars and brought their relationship back to life. Fans saw it as a moving warning that even the strongest working relationships can have short-term problems. But forgiveness and thought can heal them and make them stronger again. The actor Bavier showed a softer, more vulnerable side when she said she was sorry. Even after 30 years of unresolved anger, her bold action showed how important it is to make things right. It also brought out how complicated relationships can be in the high-stress world of TV creation. Griffith and Bavier had to think about the show's past when they saw the scene where they made peace, and how people remembered them and the show. When people feel lost or betrayed and want to end a relationship, this is a strong message for them. It helps them remember that piecework can always be done at any time. As the fight between Frances Bavier and Andy Griffith was dying down, Ron Howard was already planning a bright future for himself after Opie Taylor. This trip would change Hollywood in the years to come. Many child actors don't have careers take off as quickly as Ron Howard's did after playing Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show. However, Howard's career didn't go downhill after the show's final season ended in 1968. Instead, he continued to do well. His next big part was as Richie Cunningham on the wildly popular sitcom Happy Days. This role cemented his reputation as one of the most loved young actors on TV. Howard was able to easily go from being a child star to a leading man on primetime TV with this part. Howard's main interest was acting, but he was also interested in directing, which would soon become one of the most successful job changes in Hollywood. Howard looked for chances to direct while he was still working on Happy Days. His first big movie, Grand Theft Auto, came out in 1977, 2 years after he left the show. His film career took off after that with hits like Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, and The Da Vinci Code. Several awards have also been given to him for his work. For A Beautiful Mind, he won 2 Oscars for Best Director and Best Picture. Today, Howard is not only a cinema but also a well-respected man who knows a lot about films and is one of Hollywood's best at narrating them. Howard has had huge success with a wide range of types of films, such as historical, thrilling, and action films. The man likes working with other people to get things done. Because he is so good at telling stories, some of his films have been big hits at the box office, while others are unique works of art. Howard's effect is increased by the fact that Imagine has produced a string of hit shows, such as Arrested Development and 24. Ron Howard's work has changed the way TV shows and films are made, from his role as Opie to a multicultural business group. Howard's life taught us that change is good, and that we should always look for chances, no matter how we get there. He got his start on The Andy Griffith Show as a young star, but as he learned how to direct, he became a famous person in Hollywood.